So welcome back to this week's episode of the Political Science Show. I'm back with Adam Saltsman. So the next area we're going to discuss is the PR for indie games. So I guess the biggest thing that happened maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, was this whole thing with Phil Fish, where he had this, I guess, Twitter rant with Marcus Beer, the Annoyed Gamer, right? That a title which I find rather annoying, I guess.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. And I mean, it was very unprofessional on, Marcus's end, in my opinion. Attacking somebody in your industry, a developer in your industry who makes games for you, right?
Yeah.
For not wanting to essentially do what we're doing, right? Talking about indie,
Exactly.
I mean, Phil said he was tired of being asked about indie games. I mean, well, firstly, were you annoyed when I reached out to you to talk about indie games?
No, but I am not frequently in a position where I have to, for some imagined internet reason, defend myself. Sure. I think I don't know why, but that's just. Most of the time that I get to talk, it's about interesting things that that I'm passionate about and that don't involve me having to somehow prove that I'm not a horrible person, right? Which that's a really heavy thing to have to carry into every interview, because it's not just Phil, right? There's this was really, really difficult thing for Jonathan Blow. People right after Braid came out. It was a year of really weird relations on the internet, which are super taxing, and thankfully John still writes stuff and gives, but that's I don't know if I would.
Right.
I get one negative tweet every 6 months or something.
That's pretty good.
And then I'm in a funk for 2 days because of it, right? So I don't know, I don't know how to do it.
It was fascinating because I got a bunch of game developer stuff here in Austin. And we, Jonathan Blow will come over. And even some of the attitudes that people from our local industry have towards him, it's still very, hostile, I would say.
Yeah, which I don't get, and maybe I don't understand where this comes from, but I've talked to so many people who are so eager, and it's weird, it's the exact same conversation every time, I haven't met him, but man, he sure seems like an asshole.
Right.
And it's they always say, well, I don't know, I don't know anything about him, but I'm going to insult him.
Right.
In front of a bunch of people right now because it's fun. I don't understand, I don't know where that thing comes from. There are definitely developers who I find kind of caustic or aggressive. Very few that I would ever even categorize as toxic, as people who would actually somehow be able to make a community worse. I've only really met a few people like that, right. And most of them have grown out of it.
Yeah.
And neither Phil or John are people like that. They are, they were kind of remind me of Steve Jobs in a way, not not in the whatever billionaire genius thing, but there are people, and I often wish that I was more like this, because I know that my work would be better, even though my ability to relate to other humans would get much worse. Right. But they have really strong ideals.
Oh yeah.
They have these, I think most of us have ideals and have a really strong vision of how we think the right way things should be, or something like that, and we compromise it constantly in order to communicate with other humans and not just come off like a dictator all the time.
Right.
And I think it's possible that our art suffers for that. So when you do find people who do have really strongly held ideals and who pursue them and who don't like to accept anything less than that vision, I think it has a really weird effect on a lot of people. I look at it and go, wow, I can't do that, but that's amazing, great job. And I think other people see it, and because other industries and other disciplines and other careers talk about this same thing. Stand-up comedians talk about this, and musicians talk about this. Like there's a weird, both internet and in real life, tendency. Patton Oswalt wrote this great essay about hecklers. What things motivate hecklers, and why do they heckle? And it's because they think that, they think that they're funny, and as they're watching the stand-up gig, they are blown away by how funny this person is, and they essentially refuse to believe that that person is that clever and worked that hard and put that much effort into writing all these funny jokes from scratch. Like it's almost like it is a slight on their own identity or something like that. So I think when you have a lot of people who, the internet is full of these echo chamber communities where people are very comfortable and develop very strong opinions, and when they see someone who has been sort of toiling in relative silence for like 5 or 6 years on something, and they kind of lay it out in front of the world and say, look at this. I've been an uncompromising bastard for like 6 years to make this vision a reality. Right. I think people react to it kind of weird. I think they kind of begrudge them the opportunity that they had to do that in a way.
Okay, I see what you're
I'm not sure. And lots of people function in lots of different ways, for sure. But there's a really weird kind of base animosity that people have toward certain types of accomplishments or achievements, especially in certain creative fields. And I don't share it, but I see it a lot, and it totally weirds me out. Right. I don't get where that comes from.
I mean, have you seen Indie Game the movie yet?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I personally enjoyed that movie, and here you see 3 developers, right? Mm-hmm. And 2 of them are now ostracized, and 1 is heralded, right? Team Meat, everyone loves them because they're hilarious, they're funny.
Right.
But Jonathan and Phil, they come off. I mean, I was sympathetic to both. And Jonathan. I think they were kind of caught off guard in this movie because they were told, be yourselves, right? Don't be PR, be yourselves.
Right.
So Jonathan kind of went off on his philosophies towards indie games, which a lot of people, that we know, will say, oh, he's taking up the mantle for all, for our entire group of people, and how dare you do that kind of attitude. Now, do you feel that was, Jonathan's kind of intention going in? So I'm going to take the mantle for all of this, or it was just him just being candid?
And I think every time I've ever seen him speak publicly or otherwise, he only speaks for himself.
Sure.
He is extremely thoughtful, and is frequently 2 to 3 years ahead of the game as far as his understanding of how certain types of game can function. Especially, I think puzzle games in a way were kind of stagnating, and they had puzzle game even had this really nasty connotation from the casual game industry for a while, or at least a nasty connotation for a lot of people. And that hasn't always been the case. And after grades, suddenly, puzzle games are sort of okay again. Puzzle games are suddenly things that can have a weird message, not in the narrative sense, but in a mechanical sense. Let's not just unravel a ball of yarn, but let's unravel a ball of yarn that leads you to certain kind of powerful conclusions. Which is nobody was thinking about puzzle games that way before he did that, and he was speaking out against, really predatory, free-to-play kind of game design systems a year or 2 before I heard anybody else raving about it. Right. So,
is it a problem with kind of our community being so connected? Everyone's on Twitter, everyone's on Facebook, which I guess isn't as prevalent in maybe the book reading community. So to say that, there's this echo chamber that occurs when, he says something now and just bounces out.
Well, I
People
think
are saying tweets.
And these things can happen in certain book communities too, but I think there is like, there's this identity thing. Like when you grow up, like we're still like, so I think 31. Yeah, I should know that, right? Like that should be something I'm good at. When I'm still young enough to have grown up with video games not 100% being cool or normal.
Okay. Yeah.
If you're in high school now, like playing Call of Duty is totally normal.
Sure. Yeah,
and Minecraft in middle school, and like Pokemon and Animal Crossing in elementary school, like
or in college.
Right. Yeah. Well, like all of those things span huge age ranges, but
I'm playing Pokemon right now.
Yeah. And so like the idea that video games were once something that you would be like socially ostracized for liking a lot is kind of weird for a lot of people who are like 10 or 15 or 20 right now. But I think for a certain age group of people, video games were kind of part of your identity. Like, it wasn't just like something you did; it was something that you did a lot because you were in this weird feedback loop. Well, he likes to play video games; he's a nerd. And then, now you don't have any friends; you're going to play more video games, and lots of other things would cause this too. But I think people identify. There's this word gamer that everybody has to use, right?
Yeah,
that's a strong identity for people. It's like, I'm a gamer, and PAX is in like a week, which is like the gamer fest, right?
Right.
And it's such a strong thing for people that it becomes. I feel like a lot of video game discussions kind of, if you like swapped out names and terms, would read a lot more like arguments over religion or arguments over politics than necessarily, a lot of like actually, there's a lot of film blogs that have a lot of the same acerbic, like really aggressive language, and but when people take these things to heart, like that's why we make them. Like why bother making video games if people aren't going to take it to heart and make it a part of their life in a really big way? But when people do that, that's when you get this flip side of you get in a situation where essentially people say, I might say something like, old adventure games are just badly designed.
Okay.
They're just badly designed. But if you learned to read by playing Secret of Monkey Island, like it's, as a human, it's really, really hard to divorce, my opinion about system design and why we should bother making interactive systems in the first place is really at odds with your like deep personal attachment to this like wonderful artifact that, so what, it doesn't express certain ideals about interactive systems. It's this beautiful thing that had this huge role in my life or whatever. And like that's like the internet just eats that up. It's just like, like anytime you can find something to disagree with, which is really easy when everything's opinions, you have a new source of a way to justify your own opinion publicly and feel like you have more meaning from your hobby that already kind of defines you.
Back to the whole Phil Fish thing, how different would things be if he had like a PR department? Would he still be working on Fez 2? Or do you think he was just like at his limit?
The thing. Like Phil said, the recent events were essentially the straw that broke the camel's back. It wasn't anything that happened then, but there have been like. In general, the idea of having a PR department or having someone between the creative personality behind the game and the audience that wants the game is kind of like almost a taboo for independent game development, because we don't have a marketing department. We don't usually have a budget to pay a PR person in the first place. We don't necessarily, ultimately, like frequently the only reason that anyone will take time to write about your game is because of both the game and the person that made it.
Okay. Yeah,
Like there's something there that overlaps and is interesting. Like Gone Home just came out, and one of the things that people are going to be talking about a lot is, oh, Gone Home was made by the designer of Minerva's Den, the overlooked BioShock sequel that is kind of secretly the best BioShock game, even though it was badly reviewed at the time. And now look where he's gone with this crazy design.
Right.
The Novelist is going to be reviewed in a very similar way.
Yeah, I mean, even with Infinite, I mean, Ken Levine was definitely.
Yeah, I mean, Ken is part of the whole dialogue about Infinite completely. You know, Harvey Smith and the world of Dunwall and Dishonored, like those are very tightly connected things, and that's kind of what people. It's part of what people respond to when they play a game. Sometimes you just pick up a game, you're just like, I don't care, like this is just beautiful. I don't care what happened behind the scenes. I just love this game. But when you are trying to get people talking about your game, you know, the obvious easy asset that you have as an independent developer that most large studios don't have, you know, Ken Levine being and Harvey Smith being kind of rare exceptions. You know, the thing that you have is yourself.
Right.
Your vision, your views, your ideas are the thing that make your game stand out in the first place.
Yeah.
And when you try to isolate that from your audience, you know, in some cases, could there be benefits? Probably, but then there's this flip side risk of, you know, the thing about, Fez is a tricky example because Fez is a really, really strong game in its own right, but I think a big part of the reason that Fez resonated with people is because of Phil. And his sense of graphic design and his sense of ideals and his overall aesthetic sense. You know, he gets a lot of hate mail, but he gets 10 times as much fan mail from people who really love what he's doing.
Sure.
And so if you cut that off, yeah, you avoid, you know, that 10% hate mail thing, but you know, I think you would also lose like the 90% fan mail probably.
Yeah. All right, so with that, that's the end of this week's episode. Join us next week where we're going to discuss, I don't know, we'll figure it out.